Hey guys, another week here. I'm over in Wisconsin still at the cabin. It's Sunday, midday. Had a great time this week chasing down some fish. Spent a bunch of time on Lake Minnetonka, as many of you know. We'll jump into that. You know what, yesterday, Saturday, man, it was so windy. We couldn't even do much. The kiddos wanted to get out and chase down fish. They wanted to go tubing. We got a bunch of fishing in the morning. Then we just kind of enjoyed lake life on land, caught some fish off the dock. You adapt, make the most of it. Seems to be the theme this entire year, right? We've said adapt a ton. We've talked about weather a ton, and we got that again this week. We had a lot of rain, we had lightning, we had a ton of wind. It is just the nature of the beast. We've talked about this before. You cannot be fair weather and get out and experience and enjoy fishing this year. It seems like you just have to kind of tough through it, and you have to be willing to adapt. Those are all things that we've all done, I believe, very, very well. But this week, water temps for the first time, I think this entire year, we had some nights where they did not drop back down. We had some nights where we put the fish to bed at 72-degree water temp and woke them up at 72-degree water temp because the evenings stayed in the 70s for a high. We had that happen a couple days this week. That's when these fish really push into summer patterns. That's when they really start to set up on the structure that we know they like during the hotter months of the year. So we did see a definite change, or should I say push into some of these patterns that we really want to see happen here. So things have been consistent from that regard. We had lightning come through. We had wind come through. Shocker. We had rain come through. I know, another shocker. We just get used to it. It's that time where, you know, just kind of look at it and go, it's going to happen. So mentally prepare yourself to be in the rain, to deal with the elements, and it is what it is. So all that being said, the fishing's been really good this week. We've caught a pile of fish. Minnetonka's been very good to us for numbers of bass. We've caught some big ones. We've caught some walleye still. There's some pike going on. The musky guys and gals I know are out there catching fish. The panfish are schooled up on weed lines and deep weed points. Everything seems to be going, you know, and it's that time of year where you start the day off in sweats and you end the day in UPF and shorts. So you never know what you're going to get. How are we catching these fish? You know what? With the water temps in the mid 70s now, we're seeing some consistent summer patterns, meaning your bass are starting to move offshore. They're on the outside weed lines. They're on the structure. They're feeding on rock spots during prime windows of time. Those first couple hours of light, they're on the rocks chasing who knows what, crayfish, minnows, bait, number of things. You can capitalize on these opportunities. And then during the day, they're schooling up on offshore structure, outside weed lines, deep weed points, rock piles that have hard bottom or have grass on top of them. There's a number of things that you can look at to find fish. And oftentimes it's just looking at your GPS, it's looking at your lake map, it's looking for those obvious spots, because oftentimes these obvious spots have fish on them and we just overlook them because we think that it shouldn't be that easy, but sometimes it is just that easy. Just look at your lake map, get to these obvious spots, slow down, and catch some fish. Our far and away number one presentation this week, which I have mentioned many times in the past weeks, has been a Ned rig. And we're fishing a heavier Ned rig. I'm fishing a 1/5 or 1/6 ounce Ned rig. And I get some people that say, well, that's pretty heavy. Well, what I've seen is these fish are feeding down. I feel like oftentimes we get fish behavior patterns where they either want to feed up, they take that bait on the fall, or they want to go down and feed off the bottom. And it could be a number of things. It could be weather driven. It could be bait fish or prey driven, where the crawfish are molting and it's easier for them to go down and take the baits off the bottom. So there's a number of things that come into play. I don't know exactly to a T what it always is. Some of this for me is assumption. I just know off of experience this is what's working. This last week, they're 100% feeding down. So I'm using heavier Ned heads with my favorite plastic, whether it's a Ned ringer, you can use a TRD, you can use a piece of a Senko or a Kamita, you can use even a small twister tail, but you're feeding down to get these fish to bite. So we had one day this week, where they were eating the 8-inch magworm, the 8-inch Mr. Twister magworm on the fall. One day, and it was probably for like 3 hours. And I'll admit, when they were doing that, they were crushing, and that's all they were biting. But the rest of that day, it was all heavier Ned heads on the bottom. We caught some fish on chatterbaits. We caught some fish on some frogs. We've caught some fish on some traditional jigs. We've caught some fish a number of different ways. But if you're asking me one setup, one rig to take out there right now, I'm going to have a 7 to 7.5 foot medium action spinning rod, 15-pound braid to an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, and a Ned head. And that's what seems to be getting bit. Bass, walleyes, that's what they're eating, it seems like a lot. Now, things are probably going to change as the fish continue to get deeper and deeper. We're not pounding fish in 20 to 25 feet yet. I think when we get to that situation, I'm certain the Ned head will still work, but that's where you're probably going to get some enticement going with a fall bait, like a jig worm or something to that effect, a drop shot. But the drop shot is ironic because you're still making contact with the bottom. Yes, your bait might be 18 inches or 2 feet up. You're still making contact with the bottom, and that's when you're trying to get bit. So as a general rule of thumb, I always tell my clients when we fish, pretend you're targeting the bottom third of the water column. So if you're in 20 feet, you're in the bottom 6, 7 feet. If you're in 15 feet, you're in the bottom 5. And lately I've been telling them you're targeting the bottom fifth, the bottom 20%. So if you're in 20 feet of water, that bottom 4 feet is your zone you want to focus on. That's the strike zone to where these fish are coming in, and that goes for bass, walleyes, everything. So keep that in mind and slow down your approach, and you're getting bit. I want to talk panfish a little bit because the crappies and bluegills are schooling up. They're easy to see on your electronics. They're a whole lot of fun. You can go out there and actively catch them. We've been catching them just pitching tubes. I got a drop TG on here, and I got a Mr. Twister tri-color tube, and I'm pitching them. I can fish this anywhere in the water column. The crappies are schooled up. They're very hungry, very aggressive. Don't overlook crappies. I know it's not springtime crappies like everybody wants in the Twin Cities, but summertime crappies can be just as fun. So cover water, pay attention to electronics, look for schooling fish, you'll get bit. Another way we caught our crappies is we used a minnow bait. This is a sassy sting 'em for Mr. Twister drop TG head. Yes, that is a rocket bobber, and people are asking why. Well, because these fish are schooled up and oftentimes high in the water column, the crappies and bluegills high in the water column. I can pitch at them effectively in a little bit of wind, a little bit of chop, and I can use that rocket bobber with the jig set 4 feet down and pitch right through the school. And these fish will come up a few feet. They're almost mid-range down the water column or even in the top half. So here in 20 feet of water, 15 feet of water, they're only 5, 6, 7 feet down. I pitch that setup, and it's a super easy way to get bit, even off structure. With the advantage of forward-facing sonar, not getting into that game with that conversation, but it's easy, so easy to spot these fish. And if side imaging is your thing, or even 2D sonar, you can run around and you can still find these fish. And oftentimes they're around weed edges or turns in the weed lines or points or humps. So if you don't have any of the fancy technology, not a problem. Look at your GPS and your lake map. Get around some of these pieces of structure and fan cast around with that bobber setup. I think you'll be surprised in what you catch, and it's a whole lot of fun, and it's fast action. And if you're looking for a quick meal for the family, you got friends coming in town, and you want to catch your crappies and bluegills and do a dinner, super, super efficient, easy way to catch them. So that's kind of our panfish approach. This coming week, I plan to chase a variety of species. We will do the bass thing, obviously. We're going to be on Tonka a bunch. I have seen it fluctuate throughout the day. I'm going to be honest. Our best window of bite has been sunrise till 10 a.m. From 10 to 4, 5. You still don't get skunked, I guess to say. I'm not saying that you can't or that I don't, but that's the time of day where it gets tougher. I've had very good windows of bites at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, just saying, so you can't catch them from the couch. So if you have an opportunity to go fishing middle of the day, and that's when you can go, just go, because you can still get on a good bite. So just slow down. And then again, obviously the last few hours of light, the bite really picks up again. So first 4 hours, last 3 hours, that's going to be your best optimal time to catch fish. And that's going to be that way as we move into summer. Water temps warm up, things get hot, things get stagnant. The fish realize it. We realize it because we're chugging the water and we're feeling it from the heat in the middle of the day. So those optimal times are important. Walleyes, if people want to know about the walleyes, Ned head, I've said it before, I have tried to catch some of these fish with a bobber and a leech. I'm probably doing something wrong. I feel like I'm doing something right. I've put leeches, I'm pretty certain, in front of these fish's face, and I think it comes down to I'm having a situation where a lot of these fish, especially not at prime time, are feeding down like we talked about. So we're catching them on the Ned head. We have caught them on a Tikka minnow or a jig and wrap. That's another super fun way to catch a walleye. I am learning that pattern as we go. I know it's something a lot of you out there that target walleyes lean on. I am learning it. I'm going to continue to learn it and report back as we go. But I can tell you that these fish like that pattern against the bottom, snapping that thing up, and they just destroy it. I mean, pound that tikka minnow or that jigging wrap. If you haven't experienced it, I'm laughing because it's true, and I have been able to experience now several times the last couple years, and more so recently as I start to focus on a few more walleyes. Yeah, I said it. Sorry to my bass fans. I am not giving up on bass. I love them. That's what I target mostly. That's what I'll be focusing on most of the summer. But I'm trying to dial in these walleyes. It's been fun chasing them. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. Again, if you're doing the panfish thing, you got the 1-2 punch tubes, minnow baits. You could do a twister tail, paddle tail. These are catching them. I got the bobber set up. I got the straight set up so I can pitch and move and dance and weave. I'm using a tungsten drop TG jig head, heavier than lead, smaller profile, but I have the weight and feel to get out there and pitch and cover water. These schools of panfish are moving. They're not just sitting there like they were a few weeks ago. They're moving around, meandering. So you got to kind of chase them around a little bit to stay on them. Otherwise, see if they're still fishing down this week. I'll report back in a week and let you know if they're still fishing down. Next week, we're going to come at you on the holiday weekend. It is July 4th, this coming Thursday, Independence Day. It means so much more than just a day off to barbecue and drink beer and go fishing. It is truly, truly an important day that we should reflect on. You know, we are a very, very beautiful nation, great nation, because of things a lot of different people have done over the years, whether it's our soldiers, active, current military, veterans, whether it's our, politicians, believe it or not, with the recent debate, not getting into that. It's our presidents, our past presidents, the people that forged everything that we have for this country. So me personally, I'm going to wake up that day, probably say a little prayer, a little bit of thanks, and spend some time with family and cook out. So if you do hit the water, be respectful. It's going to be busy. Know that. Don't get to the axis and be, it's packed, it's busy, it's crazy. These guys don't know how to launch their boat. You put yourself in that position. It's going to be busy. Mentally prepare yourself. Say hi to somebody, give them a hand, hold their boat at the dock. Then everyone can get in and enjoy the sport much easier. A little bit of respect goes a long way. So have a great holiday weekend. Enjoy it with family and friends. Be safe on the water. Be respectful. Catch some fish. And I'll be coming back at you in July. It's July 1st tomorrow, believe it or not. I'll be coming back at you with our first July report next week. So get out there, have some fun, be safe, and have a great July 4th holiday.